The Vreth Dominion did not conquer worlds. It processed them. Commander Doric had always appreciated that distinction. Conquest implied struggle. It implied two forces meeting in the dark and only one walking away. What the Dominion did was cleaner than that, more honest. You arrived with overwhelming force. You broadcast the terms and the civilizations of the galaxy. Being civilizations, being rational, being afraid, surrendered. 47 star systems. Not one had made the Dominion work for it. Doric commanded 12 of those operations himself. He was not a cruel soldier. He was an efficient one, which he considered a higher virtue. Cruelty was personal. Efficiency was professional. The Dominion paid him for the latter. He stood on the bridge of the undying cause and looked at the projection of the target system floating above the command table. 1 star. Yellow. Quiet. 1 inhabited world. 3rd from the sun. Mostly water. Thin atmosphere. Breathable. Single sapient species. Recently unified. No faster-than-light capability. No energy shields. No interstellar allies. No idea anything was coming. The intelligence report was brief because the intelligence was not impressive. Doric gave the order to advance. The first probe reached Earth's atmosphere undetected and began to transmit. Doric reviewed the footage that evening in his quarters with a cup of warm broth and the relaxed attention of a man inspecting a property he had already decided to purchase. He expected the usual survey material: terrain mapping, population centers, infrastructure assessment. He did not expect what the probe sent instead. The probe, following its standard protocol, had begun cataloging the local fauna. This was routine. Most inhabited worlds had fauna. Usually it was small, timid, and irrelevant to military planning. The first sequence was from a region the probe's navigation systems labeled the Serengeti Plain. A large feline, tawny, muscular, approximately 200 kilograms, was stalking a grazing animal roughly 3 times its own weight. Doric watched with mild interest. Predation was common across biospheres. It was not remarkable. Then the feline attacked. Not alone. 3 others emerged from the grass simultaneously from different angles, coordinated without any visible signal, cutting off the prey animal's escape routes with a precision that Doric's military mind recognized immediately as a flanking maneuver. The prey animal, massive, horned, clearly powerful, fought back. It kicked. It gored. It turned on its attackers one at a time with focused, intelligent resistance. And it died anyway, slowly. One of the felines clamped to its throat for 7 unbroken minutes while the others controlled its legs. Doric set down his broth. He watched the sequence again. He noted the coordination. He noted the patience. He noted that the felines had positioned themselves before the attack in a way that accounted for the prey animal's likely escape direction, which meant they had modeled the prey animal's behavior in advance. Prediction. Strategy. In an animal that the report classified as non-sapient. He flagged the sequence and moved on. The next sequence was from the ocean. A large marine predator, black and white, enormously powerful, classified as Ursinus orca, was hunting. Doric watched it pursue a seal with contemptuous speed, which was impressive but not remarkable. Then the sequence cut to a different location, a rocky shoreline, and Doric watched the same species, or one very like it, launch its entire body deliberately out of the water and onto the land to snatch a seal pup from the beach, then wriggle back into the sea. It had chosen to leave its element. Temporarily. Deliberately. Because the food was there and the inconvenience was not a deterrent. The probe had captured footage of this behavior from multiple individuals in the same group. They were all doing it. It noted in its annotation that behavioral analysis suggested the technique had been learned and transmitted socially across generations. Cultural knowledge. In a marine predator. About leaving the ocean to hunt on land. Doric stared at the footage for a long time. He moved on. The next sequence was from a dense jungle region labeled the Amazon Basin. The probe had identified a species of large constricting snake, non-venomous, killing by suffocation, capable of swallowing prey considerably larger than its own head due to a remarkably flexible jaw structure. Doric watched it take down a caiman, which was itself a large armored predator, by wrapping around it and simply waiting. The caiman fought for a long time. The snake did not hurry. It had already won. It was just waiting for the caiman to understand that.
Then the probe's camera panned, and Doric saw a second snake doing the same thing to a different caiman 15 meters away. Then a third. The probe's annotation noted that this was a seasonal hunting congregation. They gathered here annually because the prey was concentrated. They were not sapient. They had no communication system the probe could detect. They had simply all arrived, independently, at the same conclusion, at the same time, every year, driven by evolutionary logic so refined it looked like planning. Doric closed the footage. He sat in the dark for a while. Then he called his head xenobiologist. Vetharoa was a thorough and respected scientist who had assessed the biospheres of 31 worlds without ever raising her voice. She had cataloged creatures that breathed acid and creatures that reproduced by fragmenting themselves and creatures that had evolved, independently, on 3 separate occasions on the same world. She was not easily impressed. She had been reviewing the Earth probe data for 6 hours when Doric called her. She did not sound like herself. "Give me a summary," Doric said. A pause that was longer than he expected. "The planet Earth," Vetharoa said, with the careful precision of someone reading from notes they had written to stop themselves from simply screaming, "has been biologically active for approximately 4 billion years. In that time, it has experienced 5 mass extinction events, each of which eliminated the majority of complex life on the surface. Each time, life returned, adapted, diversified. The current biosphere is the product of 4 billion continuous years of competitive pressure across every ecological niche on the planet simultaneously. How does that compare to other assessed biospheres?" "It doesn't," she said. "Nothing compares to it. The closest analog in our records had 2 billion years of active competition, and we classified that biosphere as extreme. Earth is twice that. Every organism on that surface is the current champion of an arms race that has been running without pause since before our homeworld had complex life. The prey species have evolved to survive being struck by predators that mass several hundred kilograms at full sprint. The predators evolved to generate those forces. The parasites evolved to evade the immune systems. The immune systems evolved to detect the parasites. The parasites evolved new evasion strategies." She paused. "Commander, I have been doing this work for 30 years. I have never encountered a biosphere in which every organism I examine causes me to revise my estimate of what is biologically possible." "Keep going," Doric said. "The apex predators are—" She stopped. Started again. "The large feline species alone would present a serious threat to any ground forces operating without heavy equipment. There are multiple species of large feline distributed across most of the major land masses, several of which have been observed employing coordinated hunting strategies. But the felines are not the primary concern." "What is?" "The bears," she said flatly. Doric pulled up the relevant file. He looked at the images. "Large, heavily built, dense fur. They look slow," he said. "They can run at 56 kilometers per hour, Vetharoa said. "They can climb trees. They can swim. One species is capable of surviving months without food or water by entering a state of reduced metabolism, then waking fully functional. Another species, the one they call the polar bear, has evolved to hunt in a featureless white environment with no cover, against prey that is also highly adapted, in temperatures that would kill most complex organisms in minutes, and it does so successfully and has done so for hundreds of thousands of years." A pause. "I want to be clear, Commander. The polar bear hunts in conditions that should make hunting impossible. It does not find this challenging." Doric said nothing. "There is also the wolverine," Vetharoa continued, and her voice had taken on a quality he had never heard from her before. Something between professional exhaustion and genuine distress. "It is small, roughly 10 to 20 kilograms. I want to be clear about that before I tell you the rest. 10 to 20 kilograms. It has been documented driving bears, animals 20 times its own mass, away from kills through aggression alone. It does not do this because it is winning the physical confrontation. It does this because it does not stop. It simply does not stop. The bears leave because the bears have calculated that the wolverine will keep going and the cost of continuing is not worth the food. The wolverine has won the argument not through strength, but through the credible demonstration that it will never, under any circumstances, decide that enough is enough." The line was quiet for a moment. "There is a creature called the honey badger," Vetharoa said. "I am going to send you the file. I would like you to read it, And then I would like you to tell me how you would like me to proceed, because I have been staring at it for 2 hours and I no longer know how to contextualize what I am looking at. Doric read the file. Then he read it again. He called Vetheroa back. The part about the venom, he said. Yes, she said. It survives envenomation. Repeatedly. From species whose venom is lethal to most other organisms on the planet. It loses consciousness, recovers, and continues. The current hypothesis is that it has evolved a modified cellular receptor that the venom cannot bind to effectively. It has essentially become immune to being poisoned through the repeated experience of being poisoned. It learned immunity by being bitten. Its ancestors did. Yes. And the Doric checked the file. The skin. Loose. Several centimeters thick. Difficult to puncture. Resistant to arrows, spears, and the bites of most predators. It can reportedly twist inside its own skin to bite an attacker that is gripping it from behind. She paused. I want to reiterate. This is a small animal. This is not an apex predator. This is not the most dangerous thing on this planet. This is a medium-sized omnivore that evolution has equipped with the properties of a siege weapon because apparently that was what was required to survive on this particular rock. Doric looked at the image in the file for a long time. Black and white. Small. Unimpressive looking. A creature that had been bitten, poisoned, and mauled so many times across so many generations that it had simply incorporated those experiences into its biology and stopped considering them problems. And the sapient species, he said. The humans. Live alongside all of this, Vetheroa said. Yes, they evolved here. In the middle of it. The probe has captured footage of humans in proximity to most of the species I've described. Not hunting them in those instances. Just near them. Moving through the same landscapes. Existing in the same ecosystems. She stopped. There is a sequence. A human in a region of high predator density. The probe tracked the human for several hours. The human moved through terrain that our threat assessment would classify as extremely hostile. Several large predators were within detection range at various points. The human, she stopped again. What? The human had a small device that produced sound. Music, I believe. It was listening to music. Her voice had gone very flat. It was not paying attention. It was not being careful. It walked through an environment full of things that could have killed it while listening to music. And nothing killed it. Because things that have lived alongside humans long enough have apparently learned. She stopped. Learned what? Doric said. To make a different calculation, she said quietly. Than they make for everything else. Doric called his command staff together on the 6th day and laid out everything Vetheroa had given him. The biosphere data, the species assessments, the behavioral profiles, the arms race that had been running for 4 billion years and was still accelerating. His staff was quiet for a long time after he finished. His ground forces commander, a veteran of 9 campaigns, said, "You're describing a planet that is, from surface to canopy, functionally hostile to any organism not evolved specifically to live on it." Yes, Doric said. And the sapient species evolved there. Yes. And they are not the most dangerous thing on it. Doric thought about the honey badger. About the wolverine. About the polar bear hunting in conditions that should make hunting impossible, finding it undemanding, having done so for hundreds of thousands of years. Not obviously, he said. No. The room was quiet again. His logistics officer said, very carefully, the standard suppression model assumes that a planetary biosphere is a neutral variable. Background. Not a combatant. She paused. This biosphere is not neutral. No one argued with her. Doric looked at the star projection above the table. The quiet yellow sun. The small blue world turning in the dark, patient and ancient and absolutely indifferent to his fleet. We withdraw, he said. The system is classified as a navigational hazard. No traffic. No contact. No exceptions. He paused. And the classification is sealed. Sir, his officer said, the humans will expand eventually. When they develop faster than light travel, they'll find us. I know, Doric said. What do we do then? He had thought about this for 6 days and had not reached a comforting answer. He had reached an honest one. We hope, he said, that by then they've calmed the planet down somewhat. No one laughed. It had not been a joke. Vetheroa filed her final report on Earth's biosphere 4 months after the fleet returned home. It ran to 600 pages. It was the most comprehensive xenobiological assessment ever produced by the Dominion's scientific corps. It was immediately classified at the highest level and placed in a sealed archive that only 3 people in the Dominion government were cleared to access. She requested a sabbatical the following week. Then she requested a transfer to a different department entirely. Then she resigned. Her colleagues, who had not read the report, assumed she had burned out. Long career. Too many worlds. It happened. Her colleagues were wrong about the reason. The reason was the last entry in the report. The one she had written at 3 in the morning after 6 weeks of cataloging what lived on that planet. The one that was not, strictly speaking, a scientific observation. The one she had almost deleted and then hadn't, because it was true. And she had spent 30 years in science, and she believed that true things deserved to be written down even when they were inconvenient. The entry read, "I have assessed 31 biospheres. I have never encountered one that felt, in any meaningful sense, alive, not merely inhabited, but active, aware, as though the planet itself had spent 4 billion years deciding what it wanted to become and had not finished deciding. Every organism I catalogued on Earth felt less like a product of its environment and more like an argument the environment was making. An argument about what is possible, about how much a living thing can endure and adapt and refuse and continue. I do not know what the humans are. I know what they came from. I know what shaped them. I know what they walk past every morning on their way to wherever they are going. I think that is enough. I think that is more than enough. I don't want to know any more." On a Tuesday, somewhere in a national park in a country called Canada, a woman named Sarah Okafor went for a hike. She was not thinking about the Dominion. She was not thinking about the stars. She was thinking about what she wanted for dinner and whether she had remembered to lock her car. A wolverine watched her pass from 20 meters away, half hidden in the tree line. It considered her for a moment. Then it went back to its business. It had learned, the way things on this planet learn, that some calculations were not worth making. The stars above were very quiet. They had already made their decision.